Hello and welcome to this introduction to the Mentalman's Journal. My name is Henry and I am the founder of the Mentalman's Journal, and I created the website where I was working in the city at a job for a successful large company, and I found myself becoming increasingly unhappy, and I saw colleagues around me deal with mental health challenges, and particularly in men I found there being little support, and I've seen and lived the direct consequences of a silence and a lack of social acceptability and space, particularly amongst men, for mental health and well-being that is in a place which can be spoken about normally and candidly. And I would love for there to be a magazine people could read on the train about mental health for men that wasn't something you'd feel ashamed to pull out. And I thought, right, I've got to create something which makes it okay, normal, and something to aspire towards, to constantly look to work at maintaining a good level of mental health. And so from that, really, I wrote these articles, and I left them unattended for a couple of years. And then a demand came up. I set up a public speaking event where I got the head of workplace wellbeing at Mind to do a talk, and I spoke at the event. And from that, he and I, the head of workplace wellbeing at Mind at the time, worked together on a few projects where I would go into a workplace and I would deliver talks about my own experience with mental health and how it had manifested in my family and friends and environments. And I realised how much of an appetite there was, excuse me, how much of a yearning and a lack of support there was for people who were really dealing with the normal ups and downs of life, but had no way of explaining that to another person in a way which gave them a genuine connection. I saw people who felt utterly isolated doing talks in large office buildings where people would say, I've been standing at the 8th floor looking at how far, wondering about whether I should jump off. And I thought, these people are normal people like myself who work normal jobs and who carry these terrible burdens and fears and worries which, for sake of good appearance, never are spoken about. I think there's a huge stigma and a fear around it which is doing so much better. And I wish that I had released this channel when I first started out on this path about 4 or 5 years ago. And better late than never. So here I am. And this introduction really is to give you a bit of my background, why I wanted to start up this channel and what it's to achieve. And my background is that I've dealt with mental health over the years. Like, my best friend died when I was 13. I found that incredibly hard, and I didn't hit puberty until really late, until I was 17 or 18. And I was bullied at school for my size and for a high voice. And I really didn't know myself to be anyone who people would want to surround themselves with. Those fears have stayed with me for my life, and I obviously work well to meter them, but those things still carry a certain pain or a certain weight or a certain opportunity to be triggered, and it's really important for me to constantly engage and look for ways to give myself and maintain that feeling of wholeness, and I like to look forward to life. It's a wonderful thing to wake up in the day and have a reason to be alive, to exist, and to really breathe in the full aroma that life has to offer in all its wonder. And that is something that you can't do if you're mentally ill. If you have challenges of depression, of any number of disorders, and I'd like to preface it by saying I'm not an expert in any given field particularly. I just have my own experience and the experience that other people have shared with me when working with them. You aren't able to savour the wonders that life has to offer when your mental health is in a poor state of disrepair. And that's an incredibly isolating and frightening place to be for a lot of people. And so if this was just to be you're not alone, that's a wonderful thing in itself. I hope that this channel will be a little bit more than that, and I believe there's a huge amount at stake. The next thing that really, tying into that, brought my attention to, appearances are not all that they first seen, was actually my father's suicide. When I was 19, my father shot himself in our garden at home, and that was devastating. And he was a very successful insurance broker in the city who was described often as being too nice, smiled an enormous amount. He was a gregarious, kind, loving, and open-hearted person who people wanted to be around, who involved himself in the community, and was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And one day, he killed himself, having been charming and charismatic during the course of that day with family. And that was such an enormous shock. And it was in the papers and stuff was done about it, which was painful and nice to know that people were looking out for Dad in the sense that it was something worth talking about. But that really did two things for me. It left me alone in the world without a father and having to learn to fend. And then it also, later down the line, made me realise that there were a lot of other people in exactly the same state. And I realised then, having researched and spent time and investigated, realised that, in excess of 5,700 people committed suicide in 2016 and 75% of them are men. There wasn't really, that's not something that good at all. And riding a motorcycle where people are very cautious, I won't go on one of those, they're death traps. Well, 340 people were killed on motorcycles in the same year. So it really drew my attention to the actual gravity of the situation. And after his death, I felt suicidal at times. We learn things in our lives, and I wished there were people I could talk to who I respected, who I looked up to, who were vulnerable enough, but had their lives in a way which worked, or were just capable of speaking with a certain level of authority and candour about what actually happens for most of us in life. I think it's, 1 in 3, 1 in 2 of us will get divorced. Everyone will die at some point. So we're going to know people who are going to die. 1 in 2 of us, is it, at the moment, that will get cancer. We're going to have to deal with something that could potentially threaten our existence and our life. And we will lose relationships, and we will lose friends, and we will have tough times. We may lose jobs. We may have bankruptcy. We may face awful things. We may be wrongly accused of something. And we may have to struggle with discrimination in wherever form it takes. Those things are in and of themselves difficult experiences, which a bedrock and a foundation of good mental health will allow us to deal with in the present and to work through and to grow through. However, and often is the case, we aren't able to maintain this great sort of bond of load. Think about it going to the gym. We go in with our muscles ready and we go and train them until they start tearing and they hurt. And then we need a period of recovery where we adjust and we come back stronger. What you don't do is continuously train and overload muscles, because that actually is very damaging to the body. The muscles don't get to heal, they don't come back stronger, and we continuously tear and cause harm and disrepair to our bodies, and then we enter a state of weakness. And the mind is very much like that, I believe, and we can challenge ourselves and take ourselves out of our comfort zone in incremental steps. But in life, I think life doesn't really take into account what our capabilities and what our sort of space for being able to tolerate something is. Life just happens, and buses often, as they say, come at once. And where we enter a state of disrepair, it can be very frightening, and that's where mental illnesses can develop and start and cause damage to friendships, to careers, to families, and to ourselves. And from that, in that isolating low place, there's a lack of normality. When one's brain isn't playing ball like everyone else's is, when we feel alone in the crazy thoughts, that can be very tough. And I imagine my father felt very alone in his fears and concerns and considerations. He wasn't. We know this. Everybody will at some point deal with some degree of mental health, I'm sure. 1 in 3 of us, I think the statistics from Mind will deal with a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year. And that means looking at the person on the left of you and the right of you, and knowing that one of you 3, including yourself, will statistically develop a diagnosable mental health condition in those 3 years. And they are a state of being, I believe. Mental health is a state of being, like strength or physical health. If you are attending to your mental health regularly, and then you enter rough terrain, you are far more likely to have character building or learning experiences than traumatic experiences. Inversely, if you're in a state of disrepair and sort of knocking into things and picking up injuries, mental injuries, you're unlikely to be strong and need rehabilitation after. And I'd love this channel to be something that was a bit cooler than what is often shown as this very pastely calm and almost clinical approach, where there are lots of charities set up and wonderful places where you can go and rest and find space for mental health. I just wanted a bit more of a kick-ass vibe to that. I didn't find that as appealing to me in working, being a young man who has sort of want to look good and all of that. I wanted mental health to be something that was cool, kind of badass, something you looked at and were like, yeah, this guy's got his shit together. I want to learn how he's done that, or what strategies are people using. We're generally interested in that, and you can apply them to whatever thing you care about. If that might be being a better father, being more successful in your career, feeling more confident with girls, feeling more confident with men, feeling just comfortable in your own skin. That's a wonderful thing to have. And if this channel can be a touchstone where people feel a little bit more badass in any particular area of their life, and just draw attention to the normality of the things they feel isolated and experiencing purely by people joining together and saying, aye, that's happened to me. That would be a really great thing, because we deal with it. And the number of times I've had conversations, this is another reason for this channel, in smoking areas of clubs or parties and stuff, where people know that I'm a public speaker for Mind or have done work with people in recovery. And there's that longing that I sense in them to have a conversation, and they see this window of opportunity in me through my candor about speaking about life as it really happens for us. There's this almost nervousness and a release and a relief often for people when they just say, yeah, this is what I'm dealing with. And there's no, I don't have anything to gain through taking someone on to work or pointing them in a certain direction or suggesting or saying, I don't know. It's just lovely when you get to have those kind of conversations that people are really hoping to have. And there seems to be a lack of social acceptability to darken a day, perhaps. If you're lucky enough to have really close friends who you can do that with, that's wonderful. Many people don't. And so they're carrying around this latent hope and this unfulfilled, I would say, a need to have these kind of conversations in their workplaces. They're carrying around these needs in their relationships, in their daily life, where there isn't necessarily social acceptability to sort of discharge that kind of hard information, and especially there's a fear at work that there, I believe, should be spaces and places that people can come and engage and bounce back ideas off and not feel alone about what they're dealing with. And I hope that this channel can be a clearing for that kind of thing, and just more drawing attention to how valuable that and how wonderful that is to have. And I will hope to try and navigate, as I do in my own life, where are those spaces that you can talk about life as it really happens. I haven't found it to be very effective to do that at work, purely because I'm trying to fulfill a function there. But how hard would that be for me if I didn't have other outlets and then only had the interaction that I have at work, which is true for a lot of young men and women as well. And I say, going on to that, this channel I have designed to be about men. The clue is in the title, The Mentalman's Journal. And that doesn't mean that I have any less value or consideration or importance placed on women's mental health. It just authentically hasn't come to be the path I relate to the clearest, owing to my father killing himself, having numerous people do that, and I tend to mentor typically men, more so over women. And for myself as well, I am a man and I can speak from my experience as a young male in life today. So really, if you're watching this, like, thank you so much for actually going and clicking on or touching this link and coming through to this video to engage with something that I feel very important. And I look forward to making more videos. This is my first ever video, and I'm not practiced or anything. I'm just really saying what I hope this channel will achieve, what it's about, what I care about. And let's see what happens, because this is going to be quite an adventure. And as I've had professionally as a public speaker, wow, you meet some amazing people, have great conversations, sometimes putting the world to rights, or just putting that out of office email that you send at 5 o'clock on a Friday because your work is eating into your family life and you don't have a relationship with your children. Well, if we can go from how to dress so you feel like a boss to how to deliver a good boundary to your work and personal life, to how to deal with depression at work, how to go through various pathways, ADHD, addiction, all of these challenges, divorce. If we look at how we can skillfully surf the ways of life and deal with when we're not back lovingly, as men who look out for one another, who have compassion for themselves and others in the same boat, and be interested in what other boats people are in as well, well, that would be pretty cool. That would be really great. And I see it happening gradually. So I think this video is pretty timely. And I say, maybe 5 minutes late, but here we are. So thank you for tuning into the Mentalman's Journal. My name's Henry, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.